President Buhari directs relevant federal agencies to offer assistance to flood victims in Bayelsa State.
Biodun Oyebanji takes oath of office as 5th Executive Governor of Ekiti State.
National Broadcasting Commission requests the state government to reverse illegal closure of some broadcast stations in the state.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss post-ASUU strike, regaining lost ground.
It was a huge sigh of relief for Nigerians when the Academic Staff Union of Universities last week Friday announced the suspension of its 8-month-old strike, which started on February 14 this year.
Now, it was said from the outset that the declaration of the strike was, as it were, about Valentine gift for students, and with the time it progressed to become a nightmare for everyone. Students, parents, and the academia, spanning 8 months, which means more than one academic session again has been lost.
Indeed, Kingsley, how time flies, and some of ASUU's demands that led to the strike include the renegotiation of the 2009 agreements, use of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution (UTAS) to replace the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System (IPPRS), the non-payment of earned allowances, among other demands. But the longer the strike lasted, the more it seemed ASUU lost sympathy with Nigerians, especially parents and students who bore the brunt of the protracted industrial action.
Well, it took the spirited intervention of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, to bring the government and ASUU teams to the negotiating table after many months of a deadlock. This was before an amicable resolution was reached that led to the suspension of the strike. That's just one part of the story. The other part of the story is that the federal government took ASUU to the National Industrial Court, which then issued an interlocutory order directing ASUU members to resume work. ASUU then appealed that interlocutory order, plus of course a stay of execution. The Court of Appeal directed ASUU to then report to duty by obeying the order earlier given by the National Industrial Court.
That's what the president of ASUU was saying yesterday, that they are obeying the order of the court. Consequently, all members of ASUU were directed by union's leadership to resume all services hitherto in public universities. Recall it also that the Court of Appeal had ordered ASUU to suspend the strike before its appeal of the ruling ordering lecturers to resume work could be had.
Well, the face-off is over, at least for now. But losses have been incurred while the strike lasted, and these losses include, of course, academic semesters, and if not a session, loss of lecturers and professors, some who had no money to keep body and soul together. Brain drain, we also understand, that taking place in the public university system with the emigration of lecturers abroad and a backlog of about 1.7 million students waiting for admission into various public universities. These were universities that were unable to conclude the 2021 admission processes.
Apart from the brain drain, Kingsley, some of them even died during the period, and while some students may have even, and now some students may have even lost interest in education, they say, as they engaged in both meaningful and menial jobs while the strike lingered. The ID cards of many final year students got expired during the strike, and indeed it will take a lot of effort from lecturers to rekindle the zeal of students to learn when the ivory towers get bubbling again with academic activities.
It wasn't a surprise, therefore, when the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, tendered an apology to Nigerian students and parents over the prolonged ASUU strike, saying it was unwarranted in the first place, and promising that measures were being taken to forestall a reoccurrence in the future.
Hopefully. Well, now, no point lamenting over spilt milk, as there were several mishaps and misfortunes that were tied to the ASUU strike, including increase in crime rate and well, other issues as a result of idleness on the part of students.
The issue now is with the suspension of the strike by ASUU, how can lost ground be regained? I'm talking about the academic programs that the students were on. I understand one of the universities, probably University of Port Harcourt or so, is saying that the second semester exams will start in 9 days' time. That notice was issued at the weekend, which would be like a week from now. But how do you get students who have been sitting at home for 8 months to suddenly wake up and then you start setting exams for them? Then for those, of course, who have not completed their admission processes, what happens?
Yeah, these are questions and more that we shall seek answers to with the panel of guests we have assembled on Good Morning Nigeria today. I am Jumma Yusuf, welcoming you to the first episode of the program for the week.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Jumai to also welcome you to the program live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are broadcasting from the nation's headquarters studios here in Abuja. In the course of the program, we'll bring you our complimentary segments of business and newspaper review, and hopefully also sports. I do hope that you had a pleasant weekend, Jumai.
Yeah, I know you won yesterday, so don't forget.
I don't play. At my age, I don't play soccer, but I can't. I don't want to have orthopedic issues. But the truth is, when you see good matches, when you watch good matches, I mean, you are thrilled. I recall at the commencement of the Premier League, when Arsenal won their first match, some naysayers were busy circulating on social media the league table and said this is the way the league table of the Premier League looks 2 hours into the league.
That's not terrible.
But of course you have seen what Arsenal has done.
Well, we are still at the top of the table.
Absolutely. 24 points and they are improving daily. And then Manchester City, of course, suffered their first loss as they got drowned by Liverpool just by a lone goal. But of course the biggest story came out from El Clasico, the 250th edition when Real Madrid hosted Barcelona, and of course who couldn't have watched that match? It was a great match, and ultimately European champions and defending champions of the Spanish La Liga, Real Madrid, came triumphant 2-0 at halftime. Of course they put one back, that's Barcelona, and it was concluded with a penalty from Rodrigo. All right, so congratulations to all who continue to watch great matches on television. Musbah Dan Wahab, our colleague, has a highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. I suppose you're going to say congratulations to yourself for waiting for Real Madrid winning Barcelona. Anyway,
I wasn't going to say that. There's also a sad note, by the way. I understand the governor of Rivers, Nyesom Wike, traveled out of the country with some governors. They said they went to Spain. I wouldn't know whether they watched La Liga. El Clasico.
Well, probably because one of the reasons because
United playing the CAF Champions League were thrashed 6-0 in Morocco. That's bad news.
That's bad news.
Once again,
not a good one at all. And remember, the governor actually promised them $4,000 or $40,000 each if they have won that game, but unfortunately it seems they've lost that big money that was supposed to have come their way. Now let's talk about news. News never goes on strike. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed all federal agencies dealing with rescue and disaster management to offer all needed assistance to Bayelsa and other states affected by floods in the country. The president, in a statement, extended its condolences to the families of the victims and all those affected by floods in Bayelsa State. According to reports released by the state government, 700,000 persons have been displaced in about 300 communities and villages that were submerged in water. President Buhari blamed buildings and water channels, disregard for early warnings by relevant agencies, and the changes to weather caused by climate change as chiefly to blame for the floods that have so far hit 33 of the nation's 36 states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, which has not been spared either. The president directs all concerned to work for the restoration of normalcy throughout the affected parts of the Federation. Following the havoc flood is wreaking in some states across the country. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk, has advised state governments to strengthen legal instruments to access funds for effective disaster preparedness and response.
All the respective state governments, local governments, and communities to prepare by evacuating people living on flood plains to high grounds, providing tents and relief materials, fresh water, as well as medical supply for possible outbreak of waterborne diseases.
55-year-old political scientist Biodun Oyebanji has been sworn in as the 5th executive governor of Ekiti State. Oyebanji, who was elected on the platform of the All Progressives Congress (APC), highlighted a 6-point agenda to drive its administration's development plan.
To manage the state, we should follow the steps of all the former governors.
The amalgamation of interest groups in the North has engaged presidential candidate to set agenda for rapid socio-economic and political development through a sustainable roadmap aimed at addressing national problems. 18 presidential candidates are expected to interact with the groups.
I am optimistic with a reasonable, responsible and just leadership that can give every part of this country a sense of belonging. We will achieve and we can achieve nationwide.
The National Broadcasting Commission has decried what it calls the illegal action of Zamfara State government of shutting down operations and licenses of the Commission and some broadcast stations in the state on Saturday, October 15, 2022. The NBC has clearly notified the state government of the gravity of illegality and requested it to expeditiously reverse the directive and apologize to the people of the state. The Director General, Balarabe Shehu Ilela, in a statement urges security agencies to ignore the call to restrict staff of the affected stations from conducting their legitimate duties. The Commission emphasized that it will resist any attempt to cause a breach of law and order anywhere through the misuse of a broadcast media in Nigeria before, during, and after the 2023 general elections. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, says it will strengthen collaboration with stakeholders in mitigating crude oil theft and infractions on its pipelines. The takeaway from an inspection visit to an illegal connection point on the 48-inch Focados crude oil export line in Delta State is that it cannot be business as usual.
Assure Nigerians that we are doing something to curb this menace of crude oil theft. We know the direct impact it has on the revenue, we all know, but especially on the people in the host communities and the environment. No one can do it alone. We can all do it together to achieve our desired objective.
And arrangements have been concluded for the return of over 20 Benin bronzes from the United States of America.
They will be exhibited at the National Museum in Benin so that we can unite them with the people and the place where they were looted about 125 years ago.
For Lai Mohammed, he has remained consistent.
It is not about how you came into possession of these items that matters, but the fact that they remain looted, they remain stolen, and the right thing to do is to return them to where they belong.
And that concludes the morning news on Good Morning Nigeria. The program will continue in just a moment with Jumai and Kinsley after this break.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Next on the program is Business News with Adika Opanachi Arua.
Despite several challenges confronting point of sales POS businesses in Nigeria, transactions on various terminals climbed to 735.6 billion naira in September 2022, according to data from the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System (NIBSS). Due to the unemployment challenges in Nigeria, many youths, including the women, have become POS merchants. According to NIBSS, in the last 9 months of the year, Nigeria spent a total of 6.05 trillion naira over POS, almost the same amount recorded in the full year of 2021, which stood at 6.4 trillion naira. NIBSS said the volume of transactions on POS went up as it increased by 14% year-on-year to 100.4 million in September 2022. This means that in the last 9 months, a total of 568,488 additional POS terminals have been added, as the number of deployed machines stood at 915,519 as of December 2021. However, NIBSS said there is still a gap between the number of registered POS and the number of deployed machines. According to them, a total of 2.164 million POS machines had been registered across the country as of September this year, which showed that a total of 680,991 terminals are either yet to be deployed or have become inactive. With Business News, Alika Opanachi Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika Opanachi Arua, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Coming up next, newspaper review.
And we have some papers this morning to look at. We begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, just below the masthead. Knocks trail closure of broadcast stations by Zamfara government. Knocks trail closure of broadcast stations by Zamfara government. Tinubu meets northern leaders today. Conversation dialogue over secret endorsement. 25 persons killed in Kaduna Bauchi road crashes. And the bold headlines we have in the Daily Trust newspaper, OSIA report, despite white paper asks agencies get 226 billion in 2023 budget. You can see the illustration there if you want to get the details of the report. At the bottom plate of the Daily Trust newspaper, Nigeria's fraud death toll hits 603 as 2.5 million affected. Oyerinka sworn in as Ekiti governor. Is that correct? I don't think it's correct. Oyebanji sworn in as Ekiti governor. APC PDP clash over Atiku's comment on Tinubu Obi's chances in the north. Jai's Bank new MD Siraju assumes duty. And from the Nigerian pilots, just below the masthead, we have 2023 editors converge on Owerri to examine political landscape. Labour Party flags of presidential campaign October 25. That's coming from the spokesman. Publish all tips, all. The exclamation mark. With riders, Serap gives Buhari 14 days ultimatum to set up panel of inquiry on oil theft. Demands prosecution of anyone suspected to be responsible for the crime. Insists panel should be headed by retired Supreme Court or Court of Appeal judge. Says period of investigation should span from 2001 till date. You find all the details on page 8. Flood affects 2.5 million persons, damage 82,000 houses. That's coming from the federal government. Fayemi bows out as Oyebanji is sworn in as Ekiti governor at the bottom plate of the Nigerian pilot. Bauchi fatal accident claims 11 lives, injures 9 persons. APC condemns Atiku's statement on North voting for Northern candidate. APC wants Rivers Assembly to apologize over former Governor Omeha. This was on page 5. Nnamdi Kanu Ihedioha dismisses forged letter to Malami, says Uzodinma responsible. Details on page 5. And Mossop attacks Shell, calls for stiffer penalties against oil pollution. Leslie.
Okay, we'll also very quickly take a look at some of the headlines on the front page of the New Telegraph newspaper. Above the nameplate, you have the following headlines. NBS, that's the National Bureau of Statistics, banks workforce shrinks by 10.15% to 10,520 in 2 years. Banks workforce shrinks by 10.15% to 10,520 in 2 years. IJR, Lagos tops as 36 states and FCT grows 1.9 trillion naira. And below the name flag, Senate begins budget defense this week amid reservations. Federal government to overhaul safety architecture with 36.2 billion naira. You have other details there. And Oyebanji sworn in as Ekiti governor promises prosperity. Here's Fayemi. Northern governors rejoice with ex-governor over successful tenure. The next story comes with a kicker: flooding. Federal government mulls bilateral talks with Cameroon on periodic opening of Lagdo Dam. Federal government mulls bilateral talks with Cameroon on periodic opening of Lagdo Dam. Says over 500 lives lost. We have another account there from Daily Trust indicating that it's now 603 lives that have been lost. 90,000 houses damaged, 140,000 hectares of farmlands destroyed. IDPs rise to 15,002 in Delta. Clark, that's Chief Ike Clark, accuses federal government of nonchalance towards Niger Delta. Declare national emergency in Bayelsa and others. Diri, that's the governor of Bayelsa, urges the federal government. 2023, Tinubu to face northern elders and leaders. And false articles, campaigns, declaration. What I told northern audience, that's according to Atiku. Obi promises Marshall Plan educational system. ASUU local government poll, APC clears all 69 chairmanship seats. And second list story says First Republic leaders more committed to Nigeria's unity than present ones. That's a claim by Eya. It's an interview there. You have details on pages 9 and 10. Study links chronic stress to cancer death. Details on page 8. So those are the stories that we have on the front pages of the papers this morning. There are a number of interesting stories to take a look at. The first is part of what you heard in our bulletin, and Juma, you also read that on the front page about Knox trailing closure of broadcast stations by Zamfara government. At the weekend, the Zamfara state government purported to have shut the operations of the Nigerian Television Authority, Federal Radio Corporation, and 2 other private stations in Guzo, that's the Zamfara state capital. The statement that was issued by the Commissioner for Information in Zamfara State claimed that the State Security Council had decided that the media organizations were, according to them, in breach of some professional laws or journalism laws or broadcast laws. The details were not specified, but what followed was to indicate that the state government had prohibited political campaigns in some local government areas, and that the PDP then staged a rally in one of those local government areas, and there was a fracas and a fatality arising from that. Some persons were injured. And that the apparent offense of the media organizations, listen to this, was that they covered
the events,
the rally. This is it's a huge joke, honestly. I mean, it's you say that the journalists, the broadcast stations that cover the event, committed an offense, and that was an infraction of the law. So, but if you had prohibited rallies from taking place, and a party staged a rally, where are those who were in breach of your directive not to stage a rally in the prohibited location?
Yes.
So you left them, so it is the media that covered it. It's like saying the media cover issues around banditry, armed robbery, and kidnapping, and then you say they are now guilty of a criminal offense. It's a huge joke, and it's a beautiful thing that the National Broadcasting Commission and indeed other stakeholders, including the IPR, that is the International Press Institute, have of course weighed in on this and condemned the Zamfara State government for what it has tried to do. As the NBC said, no law enforcement officer should obey that illegal directive. And this is the reason. It's clear. The broadcasting landscape is regulated by the National Broadcasting Commission. Assuming the Zamfara State government had any issues with any of those broadcast stations, the Zamfara State government cannot take the laws into its own hands. It will be a complainant and write to the National Broadcasting Commission detailing its complaint against particular media organizations, that's to say the broadcast media outlets, and the National Broadcasting Commission, of course, will then take the appropriate action. Now, this is the kind of thing that we used to witness during the military era, where a state governor could wake up and shut down a station, or the federal government could wake up and then close down a newspaper house. There's no place for it under our democracy, which is underpinned by the rule of law. And the rule of law spells out the grievance redress procedure for anyone, government or citizen. But from what the NBC has said, what the Zamfara State government did was to have acted well beyond its powers. It has no power to do whatever it has done. And we do hope that the law enforcement agents will not also overstep their bounds, purporting to enforce that directive. In any event, assuming, just for purpose of argument, that those stations actually committed an offense. So the state government will be the prosecutor, will be the judge, will be the law enforcer, without the benefit of hearing from the other side. And fair hearing is a cardinal principle in chapter 4 of our constitution. So
it's their job to cover events like this.
So you cover an event now from what the Zamfara State government is doing, and then of course you go in for it. But those who stage the event are scot-free.
And even told the security agents that they should not allow anybody go near this. But
no, that's as I said, it's a huge job.
The whole country was awash with shock. The social media was, as usual, ablaze
with condemnation of that. We just hope that they were just probably angry, but they didn't know how to express their anger. But it is not the business of the media not to cover events.
As it happens.
I think go back again to the Constitution, check out Section 22 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. The role of the press, the media in general, is guaranteed by the Constitution. What offense did those stations commit that you're saying shut them down and then don't let them broadcast, don't let them go into their places of work? And I think that
they shut them down. If he has an event, nobody is going to cover
that's like, I think asking the Zamfara State government to apologize to the people of Zamfara is one leg of it. The Zamfara State government should also apologize to those entities whose places of work were shut illegally.
Exactly.
All right, Juma. The other story, of course, has to do with the flood disaster now in the Niger Delta proper. That we had indicated when Lokoja was in lockdown as a result of the flooding, that the waters were going to find their way to the ocean, and the flood path was going to be Delta State, Anambra, part of Imo, Bayelsa, Rivers, and then before it empties into the Atlantic. And the footage that has come out over the weekend, of course, when you see those houses that have been submerged, entire communities, and right now we have fatalities of over 600 persons who have died. So I think that it's important, as many well-wishers have said, and the President, of course, has also given directives for relief materials to be provided to these communities. There was an idea that emerged when we discussed this topic almost a couple of weeks ago now, while Lokoja and parts of Kogi State were still submerged. That the NEMA, that is the management Emergency Management Agency had taken some water purification machines to Lokoja, and these were machines that the Nigerian government got by way of donation from Japan. We do hope that there are other water purification machines that are available for Bayelsa, for Delta, for I think Anambra is
indicated that Delta's own was on the way on that day, so I hope they've received it, and Bayelsa will
precisely. That's water purification, because when you see the watermarks on the structures, it does tell you that there's no way you can have access to potable water in that kind of environment, and waterborne diseases become rife on this occasion. Cholera is a possibility, and we also hope that the Federal Ministry of Health, along with the State Ministry of Health of the respective jurisdictions, will also be on high alert to ensure that the number of fatalities, of course, gets to be reduced. Already, as we have read from the papers this morning, 603 persons have died from the flood incidents of this year. That's pretty sad. Now, the Nigerian government, from what we read from the front page of the New Telegraph, is proposing bilateral talks with Cameroon on the periodic opening of Lagdo Dam. It appears that this year's disaster has been occasioned again by the opening of the Lagdo Dam. We do hope that these talks will be beneficial, so that whether it is during the rainy season or before the rainy season, let us have some water. But experts and Good Morning Nigeria have also indicated that we need to also create dams. We also need to create dams, and then we also need to deseat our own dams so that they can impound water whenever it rains or whenever Cameroon releases theirs.
Now we have to sign off this segment and call for a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
The suspension of the 8-month-long strike embarked by Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, has come with a sigh of relief to Nigerians, as academic activities are set to resume across all public universities. 2 new sets of students are seeking for admission into 2021 calendar year, and others are seeking admission for the 2022. The first set of students whose admission processes were concluded last year were unable to resume, while the other set of students sat for the Unified Tertiary Immatriculation Examination this year. Returning students also have to complete second semester of the academic session after an unwanted break of 8 months. The strike that was meant to press home demands of university lecturers for better salaries and tertiary education has, however, left the academic calendar distorted. This is why loss of crucial academic sessions has been identified as part of the negative consequences of the long-time strike.
They might be rejected due to this. Their goals, their life goals is not is low-key cut short, and this can also bring some anxiety symptoms, even depressive symptoms.
They say where 2 elephants fight, the grass suffers. So the students are suffering the more, and then parents too are affected. Even the economy around the university is also affected.
There is dilapidation of facilities going on. When you don't use facilities, houses, laboratories, libraries, you are not using them. They go bad. Our solution takes over. They will now come back. This is another wastage.
How to regain lost grounds will be the focus of guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
With us in the studio to do justice to the topic, let me introduce in our Abuja studio Yakubu Aboki Ochefo. He is the Secretary General Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities and Secretary General Committee of Pro-Chancellors of Nigerian Federal Universities. It's a pleasure to have you join us again.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
And also in the studio is a regular also, Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, a political scientist and public affairs analyst. He prefers to be called Malam. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, we have 2 guests who are joining us via Zoom from Benin. We would like to welcome Professor Lilian Salami. She is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin in the Edo State capital. Professor Salami, we're glad to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, my brother. Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And also with us via Zoom from Abuja, we have Dr. Kasim Umar, who is the chairman of the University of Abuja chapter of ASUU. Dr. Umar, we're glad to have you with us on the program today.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, let's begin with Professor Ochefu, who is the Secretary General of the Committee of Pro-Chancellors of Nigerian Federal Universities. Professor Ochefu, well, ASUU says it has suspended the strike. This is after 8 months of the public university system, federal mostly, was on lockdown. Is this a happy ending that every stakeholder wished for, or it is just some temporary relief before the fire next time?
Well, now it's a temporary relief because no agreement has been signed. And you know, ASUU is a very procedural union, and they will insist on a memorandum of understanding or formal agreement to be signed as a condition for the strike to be called off. And we believe that the parties to the agreement, that is ASUU and federal government, will set out a timetable for these agreements to be signed for us to see the formal calling off of that strike. So let us say for now it is a temporary but positive solution because we can now have some traction within the university system.
Dr. Abuja, is it time to say uhuru now, or we still have to wait for another blast to happen again from ASUU?
Okay, I think from the press release by ASUU, it's a temporary ceasefire because if I recall vividly, the last paragraph of the release said that ASUU was calling off the strike because it is a law-abiding union, maybe because the court said they should go back to the classroom, and that they are doing that again, secondly, in deference to the president and other stakeholders that are waded into the situation. So it means that by the very calculation of ASUU, it was not willing to call off the strike. But because of these exigencies that warrant that they call off the strike as law-abiding union, and because of the plea of so many stakeholders, they are doing that pending maybe the outcome of the appeal or something. So that's what I can get from the release.
Dr. Abu Hamisu, thank you very much. Dr. Kasim Umar, with us via Zoom of ASUU chapter at the University of Abuja. We listened to the two guests here with us in the studios. So this is some temporary ceasefire. The matter is, of course, before the National Industrial Court. So what should stakeholders expect right now? If you say you suspended the strike, you can embark on the strike again tomorrow if the conditions so warrant. Is that what we are faced with?
Well, I'm not hearing you clearly. Next month, on the 13th of October 2022, and the result that the strike is suspended. The suspension of this strike is based on the background that we had discussion with the Honorable Speaker of the House, the Right Honorable Bajabiamila, and a lot of things were discussed. And with the intervention from the well-meaning Nigerians and others who appeal from Commander-in-Chief, we need to look at it and prove that yes, we can suspend the strike. But one thing is important. All this intervention and the appeal and the issue involved in the strike must be documented and signed by our union so that
each party within the dispute will come into a compromise based on the collective bargaining of the entire. But as it is, the strike has been suspended, but we are not, the issue in the dispute are not satisfactorily addressed.
Dr. Kasim Uba, before we move on to other substantive aspects of our discussion this morning, you talk now about documenting the terms of the latest ceasefire. And some persons are going to have to wonder if in the statement issued by the national body of ASUU says it's a law-abiding entity and is therefore acting in obedience to the order of the court. What other documentary evidence or that documentation do you require? The order of the court is an order of the court. What else do you require?
You see, we don't want to discuss the issue on the area of court, but you are quite aware of that as I've said, the House of Rep leader met with the union and have some fruitful discussion and promise that yes, they will meet with the commander-in-chief where some issues among the demand has to be attended to. So we are talking of documents too, because whenever strike is embarked on, we are quite aware that collective bargaining is always the key, where the two parties have to sit on the table, agree what to be done, and certain documents are signed. I'm referring to that document as an agreement because we are saying all the issues involved, it is not yet satisfactorily attended to. So we need to have a document which is signed by my union and also in the part of the government.
Okay, it seems to have lost the connection there. Let me now bring in Professor Lilian Salami. Professor Lilian Salami, you must be breathing a sigh of relief as schools have been are going to open, and I'm sure you must have lots of activities. 8 months is quite a long time, but still there are some gray areas there. Okay, you seem to have lost being to. Let's come back to the studio. There are some gray areas still. Prof, schools are resuming. The students are coming back. I have seen in some social media releases that some students will start writing their exams in 9 days' time. How achievable is that?
Yeah, you see, what normally happens is once the communication is received by the Vice Chancellor, the first thing she or he will do is to call for a meeting of Senate. In that meeting of Senate, the Director of Academic Planning will have been told to redo the academic calendar. And the academic calendar will dovetail from where academic activities stopped before the strike started. There were some universities that were writing exams. There were some universities that were preparing for exams. There were some universities that were doing revisions. And so the Director of Academic Planning will look at the timetable. Where were we before we went on strike? And then how do we now program the remaining of the sessions? When will new students come in? When will the sessions start? And all that will now be presented to Senate in the meeting that the Vice Chancellor will call. Most Vice Chancellors will call meetings, Senate meetings this week. And Senate will then approve the calendar. So when they say they are going to start writing exams in 9 days' time, probably are those universities that were writing exams already, preparing to mobilize students to go for NYC and things like that. Those are the ones that they will look at the calendar and say, okay, let us give them a week or two to settle down before we commence where we were in the past calendar. So that is what is going to happen. So it's not an arbitrary thing. It's something that will be based on where we were before we went on strike.
Okay, Professor Chifu, thanks. My colleague Juma was trying to pose a question to Professor Lilian Salami, and then the Zoom connection went up. Right, we're glad that she's back on the full screen there. Professor Lilia Salami, I've been on the saddle as Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin for some years now. And tell us, how challenging is it to restart a university system that has been shut for 8 months, nearly the equivalent of an academic session?
Thank you. Let me quickly say hello to the Secretary General, who is the Secretary of TV. It is going to be a tough cookie. Indeed, I think we are just beginning and entering the most difficult phase in terms of the management of the university. Again, because of the huge challenges that are resulting from, or should I say, accentuated by the ASUU strike. So we're going to run into troubled waters. So management would have to really sit down, articulate, and then come up with ways of dealing with these issues that are bound to really happen in the university system. Haven't been shut down for 8 months. There are a lot of issues stemming from the staff, students, the governance, managing of the university, the possible exodus of staff members, which we may not be able to actually account for until we have proper normalcy in the university. And again, when you hear that the opening is as a result of law-abiding union, it then sends down some of the chase, because right now some of the staff are already beginning to ask. We are not getting alert. And so if they don't get this alert in a few weeks' time, what happens? So we have lots and lots of issues. So as Vice Chancellor's management of universities, this will be the most difficult phase to deal with. So I'll stop here and then we'll continue, by elaborating on some of the issues.
Professor Lilia Salame, yes, you've ticked off some of the broad issues that a university system will, of course, need to confront as it is reopening. But what are the priority items for now, and what should parents in particular and students also be on the lookout for as the university system is reopening?
Of course, the strike has been called off. The first thing to do is to bring the students back on campus. And it is not going to be so soon and magical. I hear, thank God some of my colleagues have already. But we have the different tiers of management, the different levels. So we need to discuss that management. Some of the infrastructure. How do we immediately bring in students so that a resumption will be seamless? Some of the infrastructure has run down over the period later. So yes, the calendar will be here. For my university, and I speak for University of Benin, for instance, today we're meeting with management, tomorrow we're meeting deans and directors, and whatever decisions we reach, we will now sell to Senate. And Senate is the ultimate that can then open the university. Because when ASUU went on strike, we left our students for about 5 weeks on campus, hoping that this strike would didn't last longer than that. But when it wasn't forthcoming, we had to call Senate to close down the university. And so it is only Senate that also has the power to open the university in our own case here. And that is what we're just trying now to do. So hopefully by the time we meet in Senate, Senate should be able to give us a calendar, revised calendar. Of course, it's going to be, shortened calendar, because there is no way we can accommodate 2021 with the short time we have, and then be able to bring in 21, 22, and even 23, because we have this set of students already coming in for that session. So it's going to be tough. But like I said, yes, we bring in the students and we'll do the very best within the, dealing with the challenges so that, the processes can be seamless.
It's one of the second longest strike ASUU has embarked on in recent times from 2009. Can you tell us the effect the strike has on the UTME and the post-UTME examinations, and what kind of backlog are you expecting now?
Yes, I just mentioned that incidentally the audio is very bad, but I hope that I'm answering the questions like the best that I can. We talked about UTME, we talked about the post-UTME. Yes, we already have a group that we admitted and almost concluded the admission for 21-22. Incidentally, because of this long strike, they are still waiting. Now JAM released another set of students that we are going to examine in another 2 weeks. That gives us 2 sets waiting to get into mainstream. And so, again, we will hope that we'll be able to manage these 2 sets so that the next set that are already going and preparing will not be left at home for too long. Because once you do that, you're punishing these innocent ones that are just coming in, that should be in as a result of, the bastardized academic calendar as it were. So we're going to try to accommodate that. Now, there is no fast rule that any institution, and it's going to be on individual basis. Some are going to probably collapse and have the 2 streams in at the same time. Some are going to consider giving some short intervals so that you don't have the same group, especially for programs that are regulated by councils. We cannot, for instance, for some of those programs, have 2 mainstream, running per so, because we're going to run into trouble waters. And so with this council, as well as the facilities that are available, would have been overstretched or cannot accommodate 2 sets. So we are hoping that we'll be able to work around this. But as I speak to you today, we have 2 sets of the students waiting to come into mainstream.
Well, Professor Salami, thank you. You already clarified to our viewers that you are speaking for the University of Benin, which is understandable. I'd like Professor Chefu to also come in here, because it looks like University of Lagos, which of course we don't have any of the officials of the University of Lagos as a guest on this conversation, probably has a very unique challenge, because just before the commencement of this latest strike, they had done what they call what was the matriculation of 2 academic sessions that were merged on account of the earlier protracted ASUU strike and some issues that internal issues that the university also had. And just a couple of weeks after the matriculation, suddenly another loss of an academic year virtually. How does a university administration begin to grapple with that kind of challenge?
Yeah, these are all gray areas that university administrators will need to become extremely creative. There are universities that have 3 batches of backlog, and I recall at one point we sat with the Committee of Vice Chancellors sat with the registrar of JAM, and asked him how do we manage this, and he was quite sympathetic and says, well, JAM will be there to assist us any way it can, but ultimately it will be the creativity of the management and the Senate to see what will work best within the circumstances that we have found ourselves. Like Professor Salami said, it's not the fault of the students. They've been given admission, but the facilities will not be there to accommodate all of them. Then you talk about who is going to teach them, because the lecturer is supposed to teach a particular set of students in a session. Now you have 3 backlogs and you want to accommodate them within that session. Who is going to pay for that? So and then of course the regulatory bodies, Medical and Dental Council, Legal Council for Legal Education, determines how many students come in at each academic session because they are going to proceed to law school or other exams at the other end. So these are gray areas that university managements will have to sit down and then see how best we can tackle these situations in the context of resources that are available, facilities that are available, and also fundamentally ensuring that the students are not shortchanged. because it is not about running a calendar side by side. It's not about running a shift system, because all this translates into the outputs that are going to come out at the end of the day.
Indeed, Professor Lillian mentioned something, and we were discussing the aftermath of the ASUU strike. Students are going to return, exams will take place, but one thing she mentioned is the brain drain, that she cannot estimate the number of lecturers that have left the country. That's a huge thing happening to the university system.
In fact, by the time you drop your calendar and you allocate academic resources for particular courses, that is when you know whether the person who is teaching, who taught that particular course at the beginning of the session, is still your staff or not.
They have all jackpot out.
Well, quite a number of them have done so. And the ones who are remaining, you also now need to say, how do I now get somebody who is supposed to teach 3 courses this semester? Because of the backlog and the situation, he now has to teach 6-7 courses. Class size implications will also be there. So until the whole process is calibrated up to a point, then we will now know how many human resources are still available to do the work that we intend them to do.
Well, Professor Chofu, thanks a lot. Now we are seeing Dr. Abu Hamusu, the ramifications of the challenge of a protracted industrial action by ASUU. Not that we haven't been down this road before, but here we are when you have this kind of pile-up. What does it mean? I mean, if you for an academic staff getting back to work, it's first of all psychologically it's not going to be easy, is it?
Yeah. There are so many issues involved, and that is why we've continued to maintain that in trying to solve a problem, you don't create additional problems that will make the previous problem like a child's play. Because if you look at it critically, even students that their parents can afford it have left the Nigerian public university system for private universities. So every day we are losing our students to private universities, even some universities that could pass for secondary schools in Benin Republic, in Uganda, in Burkina Faso. Considering our resources, what we've done before in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, where Nigeria was exporting human resource to even UK, US, and then you find a reversal because of so many things that we think we could do using strike. It is something that it is uncalled for. It's something that we shouldn't pray for, because closing down a system even for one day, not to talk much more of 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 8 months, has a repercussion that are unintended. So for the lecturers are part of the Nigerian system. They go to the same market with everybody, they use the same transportation. Some of them do not have their own houses, they are renting apartments, and landlords will not accept plea that until federal government increase our salaries. So there are a whole lot of issues, and that is why we're saying that on the balance, what can we do as problem solvers, as those persons that want the system to work, in order for us to have a seamless interaction that are positive, that will not lead to strike, that will not lead to some level of stalemate where every part will say, it's either you do it my own way or no deal, it's either I get it my own way or no deal. In the end, it is a lot of persons that will suffer, including the lecturers themselves, including parents, including, and unfortunately, I keep on saying this. There was a survey by NOI post, 9 posts, and parents were asked, what are the number one considerations when you're choosing institutions? So why do people prefer going abroad to study or go to private university? And the number one pick of most parents were ASUU strike on certain university calendar. So they did not mention quality as the issue or the low pay to lecturers as the issue. Now, ASUU trying to solve a problem using strike has become a problem that parents are running away from. And if that is the case, then it means that we should have a rethink about the procedure, the method that we're using. And that is what the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire said, that in trying to solve a problem, you don't use a method that will create more problems in such a way that the problem that you intend to solve previously, you forget about it because the problems the methodology has yielded is daunting. So that is what we are discussing here. We are not even talking about what led to the strike, no, but the challenges that the university system will have to face. For instance, rectors have taken over the hostels, as Bob said, the laboratory, if you are not using them, if they are not in use, the chemicals have expired, most of the tubes have busted. Now, it is additional cost again to government. So you could see that it's not really palatable. The situation is not really palatable. The impact is on everybody as a stakeholder, whether you are a lecturer, whether you are a student, whether you are a parent, you're going to certainly pay for this in one way or the other. So we don't pay for this kind of strike again to happen in this country.
Indeed, Dr. Amisu, this is something that we hope it doesn't happen again. Let's join Dr. Kasim Umar Vazun, if he's still there. We've listened to what others have been saying in the studio, including the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin. A lot has happened in 8 months. We've been talking about students and how the schools have been shut down. Now let's talk about the lecturers, the psychological trauma that they have gone through in the past 8 months. We've had stories of lecturers not being able to pay school fees for their children, pay the rent. It has been a terrible situation. How can we ensure that this kind of situation does not happen in the future?
Well, the audio in the studio is this if I may hear you well. The psychological effect on our impact is, as you know, for over 8 months now, our salaries have been withheld. We have not been paid up to now. And again, you are also aware that just like what the senior collector there nobody can even say now how many colleagues are available in those countries to teach, because so many left, so many have died, and the environment as it is, as you hear from even the Vice Chancellor saying, it's a serious matter. And what we are saying here is that the government have no option rather than to commit 100% attention to educational system in this country. There's no way somebody who has to be psychologically fit, who would open-minded, who will have 8 months salary withheld and go to the classroom and be teaching the training where you're supposed to be allowed to understand. But as we said earlier, we have resumed and we are ready to do our work, and we hope so that the government and also the management of the universities will do. Thank you.
Dr. Kasim Umar, I would like you, if you can hear me clearly, to also respond to the view from the other side, namely the reputational harm that the incessant industrial action by ASUU does to our university system, and the reaction of some parents who now prefer to send their wards and children to private universities or otherwise just send them abroad. One of the factors, of course, we have identified is the unpredictability of the academic calendar. That every time there's frequent recourse to industrial action, as if that is the only method that is available to seek redress.
You see, the challenges here is that we were always saying that too many before now agreement has been entered and it was not fulfilled. And we are also saying that government itself set up 5 members of committees and they came up with a solution for so many issues that is on the burner, who warranted all this issue of right. And the question you keep on asking yourself, has government done the needful in attending to this issue, even with setting up a steering committee to unravel all the challenges? You will still go back to this one by saying no. Now, yes, the strike, no academic, no union. In fact, academic staff union of university does not want strike. But when you engage the government, you correspondently, you several meetings, you setting up a steering committee, and they don't do the needful, then you are now left with the option of strike. We are quite aware that this strike does not start in a day, and this strike was embarked upon on the basis of month to month, we roll over this strike. Nobody pay attention to this issue, and the strike linger to where we are today. So now we have seen that yes, with the intervention, with the leadership of the House of Representatives and others, we were winning Nigeria with the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria. And also, we are not ruling out the issue of fraud. We are back to the school. Then we are now faced with the challenge. Now it is the government side to go back and start doing the needful, what is expected, and stop what caused this strike, so that normalcy will return to our system. And if we are saying maybe people fail taking their children to private university, the statistics has it that 98% of people seeking admission to university also use public university. What is the percentage of people going to private university? What is the percentage of people moving out of this country? The parents are still here, and we are now saying that the government has to do an holistic attention to the main issue. What are these issues? Let us see that one after the other, solving this problem. As you said, we have so many MOA, MOU, Memorandum of Action, Memorandum of Understanding, the Breeze Committee that takes over the entire thing. So we ought to do this so that we'll be able to learn from the past.
Indeed, learning from the past, most of the issues on the burner for negotiations between the federal government and ASUU has been on since 2009, and it didn't start with this government. Why can't ASUU and government sit down on the table, come to a compromise so that issues like this do not continue to happen, because it affects the rating of Nigerian university on the global scene? The experts are saying that Nigerians are more concerned about quantity and not quality.
Well, ASUU have never come down any meetings or any negotiation coming to the table. You will recall where all these government came up with the negotiation which is held by Ms. Elizabeth. Our expectation there was to come into the round table and stand what was the Green Committee. Government suddenly again came up and set up another ministry committee. And all again, we thought by finishing at that level with our unions sitting down from us to come into agreement with an understanding from that ministry committee. It's for government to do the needful and get the document signed. But as we are saying, government has all the responsibility to do what is expected from them. And the union has always been offering its help to the plight of let us come and sit down, because the general mission of the ILO is the issue of collective bargaining, coming together to agree on what is expected, what will take us to move from where we are.
Right. Dr. Kasim Umar, thank you very much there for the points that you have raised. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Let's now rejoin Professor Lilian Salami, Vice Chancellor of University of Benin, also with us via Zoom from Benin City. Professor Lilian Salami, how does a university strive to get a balance between regaining lost ground and ensuring quality, so that there is no shotgun approach? If a university is supposed to operate, I'm not quite sure now, is it 16 weeks per semester? You say, okay, we have done like 8 weeks, so now we'll condense it, let's just do 2 weeks and then we'll close up the semester. I would say a lot, of course, could be lost in terms of knowledge transfer. So how do you strike that balance? I know it's a tough one. I want to give you another example from University of Lagos. In the 90s, early 90s, ASUU had a strike in 1992, and then June 12 came in 1993, and then the protests of June 12 continued until 1994. University of Lagos at some point lost the 94-95 academic session. So it lost the 93-94 academic session. The university just decided to scrap that academic session, 1993-94, and said, okay, on the first slate, you're going to do another session, 94-95. So what kind of factors would an institution be considering in reordering its calendar in the first instance, and more importantly, striking a balance between regaining lost ground and maintaining the standards?
Yes. This will be the first time, thank you, that we're going through this. Remember, COVID came, and then most of the universities still carried on. We are actually guided by the curriculum or curricula of programs, as well as, the content area. So what we are just not going to do is, yes, we're going to have to shrink to be able to accommodate the sections that we have almost lost, and then the one that we should have been actually in right now is to appeal and plead with lecturers to be committed. So while we are maintaining that, yes, we need to cut down on hours, we need to cut down on days because of the catching period that we need to have, we must not compromise quality. So heads of department and deans, everyone on board must be really committed to training students so that they are futuristic. We are training students for the future. We're also training quality students that can compete globally. So we are not going to. So yes, at time we would have to shrink some of the period, but not shrink to the point where it would impede on the quality of the output. So, like I said, we have to talk to our lecturers. We know it's a commitment. We know it's a sacrifice that we have to make. We also know that we need to keep our integrity. And so the university would ensure that all of that is done even within the shorter period.
Okay, let's come back to the studio. Prof, let me come to you. Schools are resuming. We've been talking about lecturers, how things will work out, but have you really thought about the students? Most of the students in public schools come from poor homes. The parents have to organize money to send them back to school. And with the present situation we have, some are in the University of Lagos, Lokoja, with the flood situation happening across the country and the economic crunch itself, how emphatic will the university system be on the students returning to school now? What if they can't make it before the stipulated time that various universities are setting up for the exams to start or registration to continue?
It comes back to the whole issue of how we organize university education in Nigeria. We have 3 types of students in our public universities. The indigent students, the regular students and the affluent students. They exist on our campuses. The well-to-do and the regular students will not have the type of challenges that we are talking about. It is the indigent students that have. And some universities have done the numbers to show that the percentage of indigent students in our campuses averages like about 20-25%. And when we say a student is indigent, we are talking about the student that cannot afford 3 meals a day, a student that cannot afford a smartphone, a student that cannot afford to go to the internet to do his or her research, and a student that cannot afford his or her own accommodation. These are the students that are categorized as indigent students. And so the reality of the situation is that universities cannot cherry pick who to make allowances for, because it's a holistic system. And indigent students will find their way into the campus, will continue to do the type of things that they will do to make ends meet, work in the night, or do public transportation, or do POS and things like that, to be able to support themselves, because all the indigent students support themselves to pay their way through university education. It's not unique to Nigeria, it's not peculiar to Nigeria, it's a global situation. So the university calendar cannot be designed to say, okay, the issues that you have raised based on the observation, yes, the calendar will not be designed like that. The calendar will be designed to say, we have been in this type of situations before. Let us set the criteria and see how many of our students are able to come up. If things are too rough and you are not able to come up, the situation provides that you can what do you call it? You can carry over your maybe it's a rollover your academic calendar. Yeah, the flood situation we're talking about is real. If you see the pictures coming out of Niger Delta University, the road going to Amazonia has been completely cut off. You have to take a canoe to get to the campus, and virtually every building on that campus is underwater. So that type of university will not be able to open for students until the flood recedes and they clean up the university, the environment before students can come in. But for the universities that don't have these challenges, they will resume with their calendar, and we know that those who are hard pressed, to come to the campus because of this wider economic and social issues that I talked about, will come because they are part of that system.
Professor Chefu, thanks a lot. Earlier, Dr. Kasim Umar, while responding to our questions, they claim that of the number of candidates seeking admission into public universities, or universities in the country in general, 98% of the candidates are seeking admission into public universities. I'm not quite sure if that figure is correct. I don't have a counter figure. But I know that from time to time, JAMB does its briefing. At the last exercise admission meeting, that's the policy meeting, which was in July at the International Conference Center, Professor Ishaq Oweyede, as usual, read out all the numbers, and the numbers didn't come anywhere close to 98% of candidates seeking admission into universities, of course, applying to public universities. I know that by public universities I meant federal universities and state universities, but the numbers are not that high. It probably is a percentage lower. As I said, I don't have the counter figure to immediately deploy to that, so that viewers get appropriately informed. Dr. Abu Hamisu, I don't know, how do we get around this now? University is going to have to condense a number of things. Admission processes, you have a backlog, and you're not immediately recruiting staff to do that. So one lecturer may have to do a lot more work. Would that not then create again another scenario of earned academic allowance?
Yes.
One of the reasons why they went on strike.
Yeah.
And then in the future you say you earn this allowance. Yes. Well, tell us how that works out.
Well,
it boils down to the point I raised earlier on, that going forward, if we must get ourselves out of the woods and the quagmire we are getting ourselves into, we must be able to solve our problems in such a way that we take into considerations our challenges. You may have very good fight, you may have very good point, you may have reasons why you must get what you want to get. But if the timing is not right, then you've got a problem, because I think that is what happened with this strike. The country is undergoing several challenges. The economy is not doing well. You talk about insecurity. We're talking about post-COVID challenges that has to do with inflation, unemployment. It's not something that is peculiar to Nigeria. You have lecturers overseas for the first time that are saying that inflation has taken away 35% of their earnings and that they wanted the increment. They're equally protesting for the first time. I'm saying that they may likely embark on strike, but it was a warning to the people in power. So it is something that is peculiar to Nigeria, and that is the problem we always face in this country. And I've said it even on this platform about the way we do things in this country. For instance, the accreditation team goes to the university to do accreditation, and then we decided that we don't want to lose that accreditation. And we collect CVs from our colleagues from other universities, and we do the accreditation. What we are telling government is that we don't have a need for any manpower. Our libraries are in order. All the things we need are in order. And government goes away with that very particular belief. Because this is real, this is happening. And then when the real work is to be done, now, the number of staff you have is not up to the number you claim on paper that gave you that accreditation, so that you have one lecturer taking 2-3 courses, and that becomes extra burden on the lecturer, and then it becomes an allowance, because these are extra work done outside the normal. For instance, I'm supposed to take 40 students per class, and then the vice chancellor had over admit, so I'm taking like 80. The additional 100, then the additional 60 is at additional cost to government, because I'm doing extra work. And these are some of the things that used to go into the calculation of an allowance, including what you've just said. Now we've gone on strike. Some of our colleagues have left the system. We need to do extra work, and then government work most at times is not free. But I know that sometimes there are work that we do in the classroom that we do them free. If we say they should pay us, the government may not be able to pay us. So how many more of these sacrifices are we willing to put in? Because I look at it, if we want to look at the solutions to our universities from this point of view that it must be 100%, then we are not going to get anywhere. But if we look at the revitalization process as a national sacrifice by those of us that choose to give ourselves to teaching the younger generation, then we will make headway. Because if we will have to calculate everything in terms of Naira and Kobo, with the situation Nigeria is in now, with the international community that is struggling to grapple with post-COVID impact globally, and the way even Chinese economy has been downgraded from the forecast, our own too has been downgraded. America is not smiling. So even the rich guys are not smiling. So until we are beginning to look at these issues from patriotic point of view, that it is our collective responsibility to replicate the sacrifices of our heroes past, then there will be a problem. Because at the end of it all, as Mr. Kingsley rightly pointed out, we do the work and we give the bill to federal government, and that will equally balloon the earn allowance. And they are saying that they cannot give us the one we've earned already, and we are bringing more, so it will be piling up.
It becomes a syndrome.
Yes.
Syndrome.
Yes.
Indeed, Dr. Abuamisu, yes, as the program begins to wind down, we'll be looking at probable solutions to the issue. So we've been discussing post-ASUU strike, regaining lost ground. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Yeah, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. We still have all our guests with us here in the studios, Professor Yakubu Ochefu, Dr. Abu Hamisu, and via Zoom, Professor Lulu Salami, Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, joining us from Benin, and also Dr. Kasim Umar, who is the University of Abuja ASUU chair. Well, we have said now that this is not a resolution of the crisis. Let's be honest. ASUU says it's done this in obedience to the court order. So the matter is still in court. When the outcome comes, or whatever the parties agree will be won. But Professor Chifu, I think we had a conversation on this subject some weeks ago, and we had a number of conversations around the ASUU strike and what needs to be done with regard to how we can, as it were, eliminate this incessant strike. Funding or financing is one of it. The other had to also do with autonomy, proper autonomy for the institutions. Nobody seems to be talking about those issues right now. Have we swept them under the carpet?
No, we have not. And it comes back to what the bigger conversation that we must sit down, all the stakeholders must sit down to see how we can recalibrate the educational system in general and the university system in particular to get it to work for Nigeria at this stage of our national development. If we don't do so, we will keep patching and mending and going through this cycle. It does not really help us that the people who are supposed to think for society, i.e. the university community that are supposed to think for society, are not able to break an intellectual or mental logjam going back 35, 40 years. We have to come back and agree that this system is not working. And what do we need to do? We need to put our ideological problems on the table. We need to bring our economic situation on the table, our governance issues on the table, and say where Nigeria should be at this point in time. We cannot afford to do A, B, C, or D. We must go this particular path. And I think that is a conversation that is now going to be kick-started. When the pro-chancellors met with Mr. President over the resolution of this matter, the former PDP APC chairman, Mr. Oyebo, point blank told Mr. President that we need to convoke a major policy dialogue to rethink university education in Nigeria. So it can't be swept under the carpet, because if we sweep it under the carpet, it's only a matter of time for government to now say, okay, we have signed the agreement. Already the other unions are saying that even though they've called off their strike, what government promised them, government has not done. And we are talking nearly 2 months now that those ones went back to work. So we don't want a situation whereby by early next year, ASUU will now start saying we called off the strike in obedience and nothing has happened. We haven't seen any agreement, no documentation has come, and then we continue, and then after about a year or two, the strike comes again, and then we are back to square one. So we must break this cycle, and the only way we can break that cycle is to come and have a brutally frank conversation on this matter, and then get government to commit itself to say we must do things right. The autonomy you mentioned is a very clear perspective. The law established universities are very clear on how universities are supposed to be governed. It is the same government that is not abiding by the law establishing those universities. So government is the one that needs to rethink, stand in front of the mirror and look at themselves and says, these things that we are doing, we are not doing properly, we need to do it the way we have said the law should do it, or review the law so that it works for us as a people and as a nation. That will be my take on that subject.
We're talking about the autonomy of the universities and the negotiation between federal government and state government and ASUU. Now that the federal government has registered 2 other unions in the universities, the monopoly has been broken. The center can no longer hold. So who will negotiate now on behalf of the universities with the federal government if these other 2 unions exist and do not agree with what ASUU is doing?
It's the proprietor of the institution. The proprietor of the institution is the federal government. So federal government is the one that will say, if you are a member of this union and that union can say, okay, for my professors, I negotiate a salary of ₦1 million. and this other union is not able to negotiate a salary of ₦1 million, it will be collective bargaining as it is called. So it is the proprietor of the station that will determine how to negotiate with this. This is not the first time that we are having a multiplicity of unions in our university system. I mean, the average Nigerian university now has 6 unions. You know, I mean, it doesn't work anywhere in the world that you have a university system with 6 unions. So these are part of the conversation that we must have. Do we need 6 unions in a university? All right, Professor Chefu, thanks a lot. Professor Lina Salame, you popped up on the screen a while ago. Do you agree with a view expressed by Professor Ochefu regarding the larger policy conversation that stakeholders need to have on university governance, autonomy, funding, indeed the way forward? And if you do agree, what items would you like to find on the agenda for such a conversation?
Exactly, we have been on this issue for quite some time, and like it is commonly said that you cannot continue to think that things will change if you continue to use the same method. So I think, just in agreeing with the Secretary General, that we have all learned very hard lessons from this prolonged strike, both the unions and government, and I think we need to go back, sit down, articulate, get to a round table and actually look at the universities. If we want to run the universities according to policies setting up these universities, but we must not compromise in any way. And I think the major problem is autonomy. If you don't get, again, trying to stay in the middle so that I'm not on one side or the other side, you cannot have autonomy when somebody still has control of certain area. They say he pays the piper, he pays the toll sometimes. So we need to look at what do we define, what are we really saying when we say autonomy. If that is the case, then we must define the realistic terms, in realistic terms, what autonomy of the university means. And then we cannot do this by taking the same position or taking the same methods of operation that may actually not pay off. Like I said, we all must have learned really terrible and hard lessons from this prolonged strike. So that is the only way forward, is for us to articulate, sit down and really define what exactly and how universities should be run. And if we agree on that, then of course, it will become seamless. But where we are right now, we are confused, issues are not settled, and we may never get to that point where our universities will actually become universal, will be universities that will produce quality graduates, because we have issues. And again, aligning with the Secretary General, that is the way to go. We must come back, redefine modus of operandi, governance, things that must be done, things are policies that must be put in place, the ones that are obsolete, the ones we need to change. We must do all of that, and until we do that, I hate to say this, jumping on the same spot and not moving forward.
You've been Adventure's Vice Chancellor for some time now, and I'm sure you've experienced lots of strike happening. Do you foresee a strike-free university system in Nigeria in the future?
I didn't hear one word from that.
I think you've been a Vice Chancellor for some time now, and you've experienced lots of strikes in the university. Do you foresee in the future a strike-free university system in Nigeria?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we can't. Is Dr. Kasim Umar still with us via Zoom? Dr. Kasim Umar, I would like you to also respond to the issue on the table with respect to what to do going forward. We know negotiations can always be ongoing, but how to overhaul university governance, the funding challenges that we've talked about. I'm not sure you heard this, or it's become like I'm sounding like a broken record. I've said this on Good Morning Nigeria the number of times that we have discussed this issue. Just an aspect of funding. Let me give you the example. Assuming there are 1 million students in federal public universities in this country. And the federal government says a flat rate, 100,000 naira for tuition per academic year, which comes to 50,000 naira per semester. The government and the institutions that thereby would raise 100 billion naira. That's funding. That's to say flat rate. Nobody's talking about that. But there's also the issue around the governance, which is autonomy. Professor Chefu already made his comments, and Professor Lilian Salami also made her comments. Are these matters that ASUU will be interested in as part of a larger policy dialogue on the way forward?
Well, I didn't hear you well, but let me also say one thing. You see, the act that established university is specifically reference to the Miscellaneous Provision Act of 2003, as I mentioned, clearly defines how the governance of the university is to be run. And again, the autonomy of the university. And let me quickly go to the model we are trying to maybe think in terms of having a one million. You see, in a country where the minimum wage is 30,000 naira, in a country where the living wage cannot take anybody home, regardless of what you are expected to do in terms of either maybe making the health facility, the educational sector, etc. You ought to do the needful by funding. The federal government owns this university, and they keep on saying there's no money to fund the university. But in another way, they keep on also establishing the university. How do you say you have no money to fund the existing one, but you are in one way or the other establishing another new one? As it is today, we have 49 federal universities in Nigeria with 57 state universities in this country. And as we are also talking, about 33 bills are waiting the National Assembly approval. So you ask yourself this question: why government is saying there is no money and to fund the university, and you at the same time again establishing the new one?
All right, Dr. Kasim Umar, we're getting pressed for time. We also would like to hear the views of Dr. Abu Hamisu in our studios here. And just one point, I heard you, and I'm sure our viewers also heard you, when you say in a country where the minimum wage is 30,000, how many persons can pay that? Not every worker in Nigeria earns the minimum wage. The minimum wage is the shop floor figure. In the federal service, I'm sure you are aware, there's grade level 1, but nominally there's nobody who's on grade level 1. It starts from grade level 2. So you have persons who are on grade level 2 up to grade level 17, which is directorate level, who have their children in schools. And Professor Chefu here in the studios said there are 3 categories of students who are in public universities. 1, you have the indigent; 2, you have the regular; and then 3, you have the affluent. So why do we keep making reference to a country where you have 30,000 as a minimum wage? You can't buy anything. There's virtually no family where you don't have.
Every parent is a civil servant.
A civil servant where you don't have persons or families supplementing their incomes. You can't have a wife who is saying at home and saying, I'm waiting for my husband to go and earn minimum wage for us to survive. She will be doing her own petty business. I've also started on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, and I said, look, maybe we haven't done that. That's the business of the academics, to just probably do a survey. Breakfast, this akara business. Yeah. In urban centers in Nigeria, what is the value of that economy, that sub-economy of akara? People just taking akara and they're taking pap or whatever with it. Or say, you and I will say, go and buy akara, buy a loaf of bread, take it, our tummy is full, and then we go out. All right, Dr. Abu Hamisu, I know that.
We have to be very honest with ourselves. I want to open our minds to the accusation by the president about the corruptions that are ongoing in our university system. And the leakages too. It is shameful as far as I'm concerned that we have a University of Technology that is still awarding contract to construct roads to private firms. In that university has Department of Engineering, Architecture, and so on and so forth. So why can't we start using our resources in the university to build our university system? Or that the federal government is lightening the campuses in Nigeria, and it is private firm that is doing that. So what are we talking about? So we have to be very honest with ourselves. A lot of things there to be done. We have to be honest. For instance, if ASUU is talking about revitalizing the university, we should start thinking with our resources within the system. And our vice chancellors must be put on their toes too. Because some of them live as if they're executive governors driving cars of 20, 30, 40 million, even the principal staff. And then there is no money to buy microscope and no research grant, no this, no that.
It doesn't. This conversation doesn't end. I'm sure there'll be another platform to really talk about the post ASUU strike and regaining lost ground, because a lot of issues will be coming out as schools resume. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, a political scientist and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Yakubu Ochevo, he's the Secretary General Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigerian Universities and Secretary General Committee of Pro Chancellors of Nigerian Federal Universities. Thank you so much, as usual, for your input on this conversation.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
From Benin, we are joined by Professor Mimia Salami, Vice Chancellor University of Benin. Thank you so much for your input. My sister, thank you. And also via Zoom, we have joining us Dr. Kasim Umar, who is the Chairman, University of Abuja chapter of ASUU. Thank you so much for coming. Now let's go to the world of sports.
Victor Osimhen was the hero for Napoli as he bagged the all-important goal, which sealed a 3-2 win against Bologna to send his side back to the top of Serie A on Sunday. Osimhen has now scored in back-to-back games since making his return from injury. The Super Eagles striker's tally in the Italian top flight this season is 3 goals in 6 games. The win against Bologna took Napoli on 26 points above second place Atalanta on 24 points. While fellow Super Eagles striker Sodisas noted his second goal in the Serie A as Cremonese held Spezia to a 2-2 draw away on Sunday. Desas gave Cremonese the lead in the second minute of the encounter. Bambala Ozola and Emil Holm scored on the 19th and 22nd minute to put Spezia 2-1 ahead. In the 52nd minute, Charles Pickle drew Cremonese level, which was enough to earn them a share of the spoils. Desas was taken off in the 72nd minute, while David Okereke played for 90 minutes.
That's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. As always, we appreciate your tuning in. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning.
And I'm Jim